Good day, mates. Today we're doing AP Macroeconomics, Unit 1 and 2 in under 10 minutes. So let's get started right away. We were going to be learning about supply curves, demand curves, and price floors and ceilings in quotas. And that's basically it. So without further ado, let's get started. So all you need to know about demand curves is how they shift, the change in demand, quantity demanded, and why they slope down. And that's basically it. So a demand curve looks like this. This is the price of a good, and this is the quantity demanded of that good. So that's a demand curve right here. Now, a shift in QD, or quantity demanded, is caused by a change in price. So a change in price. And this is really intuitive. So if gas suddenly went from $5 a gallon to $1 a gallon, then obviously people are going to buy more gas. That's basically it. Now, how does a demand curve shift? Left or right? Well, they shift by the acronym TRIBE. So T stands for taste, R stands for related goods, I stands for income, B stands for number of buyers, and E stands for expectations. So anytime you see one of these situations pop up, that's a shift in the demand curve. So let's go over this one by one. So what is taste? Well, if consumers think the taste of your good is better, so they have better taste and preferences for your good, then they're obviously going to buy more of your good. So demand curve shifts right when they buy more. Related goods is a bit more complicated. There is two categories that you need to know: substitutes and complements. Now, substitutes are directly related, while complements are inversely related. And this is actually not that bad to understand when I give a simple example. If the price of Coke goes up, then people are going to buy less Coke and going to buy more Pepsi. So the quantity demanded for Pepsi will go up because Pepsi could substitute Coke. So that's why they're directly related, because if one goes up, the other go up. Now, what is complementary goods? It's like chips and salsa. So if people buy chips, they're probably going to buy some salsa to go along with those chips. So if the price of chips go down, then people are going to buy more chips. So the quantity demanded for salsa will go up. So you see how these two are opposites. When one goes down, another goes up. That's why they're inversely related. And that's basically substitute goods and complementary goods. Now, what is income? So if the income of your customers increases, then they're going to obviously buy more of your good. So that's why demand curve shifts. So that's pretty intuitive. Now, what is number of buyers? Well, if there's more people on the earth to buy your good, then they're going to buy more goods. So that with more people will shift your demand curve to the right. So more demand. Now, expectations is a bit more tricky, but it's not that bad either. So if people expect your prices to go up in the future, they're going to buy more. So expect prices to go up in the future. They're going to buy more now. If people expect your prices to go down in the future, they're going to buy less now. And that's basically it. Now, let's go over why demand curves might slope down. You can see that this is due to three things. One's the substitution effect, which is basically the idea as goods become cheaper, so more expensive good becomes cheaper, people will buy more of the cheaper good instead. And that makes sense, right? So if a good costs like $10 and now it costs $1, you see the quantity demanded increases. It increased the quantity demanded here. So that makes sense. And the second idea is income effect. So as goods become cheaper, this is basically a repeat of number one, people will buy more of that good because their purchasing power increases. So their purchasing power increases. Now, the final idea that you need to know is the law of diminishing marginal utility. This might sound like a mouthful, but it's not that bad. So the basic idea is very straightforward. Let me write utility. So we have a graph here, and this is the utility you get out of each additional good that you buy. So the number of good or service. For example, if the first tea kettle that you buy, you see a lot of uses for it. You could boil tea, you can make water, and a lot of other stuff. The second tea kettle, you still find some use for it. You could maybe boil water faster, but as soon as you get to the third tea kettle, the fourth, the 100th tea kettle, if you have 100 tea kettles, then it kind of becomes more of a burden. Like, how are you even going to fit 100 tea kettles in your house? So the utility that you have for those tea kettles actually goes down. So that's basically the idea of law of diminishing marginal utility. It's pretty simple. Now let's go to supply curves. We're finished with demand curves. So a supply curve, we're going to go over the same concepts, what it looks like. So this is the price, this is the quantity supplied. It looks like this. So the more that a good costs, the more supply it will have. For example, if you're producing PS5s and a PS5 suddenly goes from $500 to $1,000, then boy oh boy, you're going to rank up production of PS5s and rake in those big bucks right there. So that's basically supply curves in a nutshell. So what could cause a shift in the supply curve? So a shift in QS, well, that's basically the same as demand curve, a shift in price. So if the price goes up of the good, then the suppliers will produce more of it because they can make more money. Now, what will cause a shift in supply curve and not a change in the quantity supplied? So shift in supply curve. Well, we were going to use the acronym TREND. So T stands for taxes. The more taxes you charge for that supply, then the less the supplier will supply of that good because it's costing them more money. The second is resource prices. So if resource prices increase, then the supply will decrease because it costs more to produce. The next is expectations. So if they expect prices to rise in the future, then they're going to withhold supply so they can sell it at a higher cost later. So supply will go down now. If they expect prices to lower in the future, then they're going to increase supply now and try to sell all the stuff that they have in inventory. Now N means number of producers or competition. So the more people you have competing for this good, for example restaurants, the more supply you have. That makes sense, right? Like the more restaurants there are, the more food that are made. So the last T is technology. So if technology increases, then the supply will obviously increase. And that's basically it. And that's basically what shifts supply curves. Right, we're almost done. Now we just have to cover price ceilings, price floors, and quotas. So ceilings, a price ceiling is a mandate instituted by the government saying that if something cannot go over this price. For example, gas cannot go over $5 a gallon. So this will be our supply curve and this is our demand curve. This would be our price ceiling. Price ceilings will create a shortage. And this is our shortage. So the market will supply this much, but the equilibrium for supply and demand will actually be here, but the demand is higher than the supply. So QD is here. Because it's cheaper, more people want to buy it, but then suppliers don't really see a point of increasing supply if people are not going to pay that much money for it. So that's why quantity supply is low, quantity demanded is high, and that's why we have a shortage right here. So if the price ceiling is lifted, then quantity supplied will go up and quantity demanded will go down. And the reason why is because suppliers will increase their price, right? Suppliers will increase their price since it's shifting up, since they can make more money from the more demand that there is. But then as the good increases in price, people are gonna buy less of it. So that's why it's like that. So it's pretty intuitive when you think about it. So what this price ceiling does, it protects consumers. It helps them buy essential goods and rent. But it helps borrowers a bit because, it costs less money for them to borrow the stuff. And it helps control inflation. And the main thing you need to know is that price ceilings cause shortages. And that's it for price ceilings. Now, what are price floors? So price floors. So price floors are basically implemented by the government, again, just like a price ceiling. And it looks something like this. This is the demand curve. This is the supply curve. And a price floor is this. So it creates a surplus. So this is the quantity demanded. This is the equilibrium between supply and demand. And this is the quantity supplied. Now, what is a price floor does, it protects producers. For example, if you produce corn and it ensures that farmers who produce corn make a profit, for example, and it helps with minimum wage. So you have to pay workers, for example, a minimum wage of $15 an hour. That is a price floor. And the bad part about price floor is that it creates a surplus. So let me explain this a bit. So the demand is not that high because the good is expensive. There's a floor for the price. But since the good is expensive, suppliers can make a lot of money. So they want to produce more. But there's not a lot of demand for it. So that's why there's a surplus. But some people argue price floors are necessary. For example, what if somebody says you're only worth $2.50 per hour for me? Then this is obviously exploiting its workers. So that's why minimum wage laws exist. But the downside of that is creating a surplus. Now the last concept you need to know is quotas. So what is a quota? A quota is implemented by a government again that basically helps protect domestic industries. So let's say this is supply and this is demand. A quota could be here. So for example, Japan could only export like this many cars to us. For example, can only export 10,000 cars to the US. So that way it could protect American car makers. Now this shaded area is called dead weight loss. And this region is called the wedge. And obviously, again, we have to label this. This is the price of the good, and this is the quantity supplied. The price and the quantity of the good. Sorry. So if the government restricts how many, for example, goods can be imported into this country, the supply, the demand will be up here. So if there was no quota and the supplier made this much good, the supplier would have only sold it for this much money. But demand, since there's less good, people are willing to pay way more money for it. So for example, if the US restricts how many cars Japan can import into the country, then the price of these cars will be higher than they normally would. Because there's less cars, there's less Japanese cars in the American economy, but there's still people wanting to buy those Japanese cars. So that's basically what it means. And that's basically it. So quotas create market inefficiencies. And that's all you need to know for Unit 1 and Unit 2 of the AP Macro test.